Welcome and hello. I'm Teresa from Capturing the Charm Life, and I'm here to help you turn your homeschool challenges into your homeschool charms. I am so glad you're here. Big day. I'd say we need to talk about 13 things that mentally strong homeschool mamas don't do. A book by Amy Morin that has nothing to do with specifically homeschool moms. 13 things that mentally strong people don't do. But I've loved and absorbed that book, and I've got a few ideas about how we homeschool mamas can use the information in that book to be mentally strong. Kind of useful in these times. But first, I want to do a little show and tell. So I thought, since you can tell there's a little less light outside, the days are getting shorter and darker, at least in my part of the world. Every morning from about this time until about April, May, or the next time change, I use something called a daylight or a UV light for about 10 to 15 minutes in mornings. And I sit with it on my lap while I do my typical morning routine with my cup of coffee. I'll show you what it looks like. I know you can't get this version anymore, but there are many different versions that are similar. And really, it is just a big old light bulb, a few light bulbs even. And if I turn it on right now, you will definitely get more light, but you won't be able to see it. What does it do? What's its value? It infuses your body with more vitamin D, which is exactly what we need right now. And though you can get vitamin D from your food, and you can get vitamin D from going outside and enjoying the sun, and you certainly can get vitamin D in supplement form, there's another option. And it really does wake you up a little bit in the morning and feel like the day has begun. If you are in a part of the world like me, where it's kind of dark at a certain period of the year. So that is one of the self-care strategies that I do every day. That is my show and tell. So how are you feeling about homeschool? Everyone's got a different experience this year, whether you are homeschooling for the first time or you've been homeschooling for a number of years. So what's it like in your house in the beginning of November? Sometimes this, especially for the first year new homeschoolers, or at least in the first few new homeschool years, it can feel kind of overwhelming. So that's why I released a podcast this morning on tips to handle homeschool overwhelm. And I had such a pleasure to chat with Sarah from The Happiness Here this morning as well. And I get to talk all sorts of different things from this veteran homeschool mom. She got to talk to me about how she wants to instill self-confidence in her kids, how she has actually grown throughout her homeschool years, maybe more than she would have expected her own kids to have grown and matured and developed. And I gotta say, I identify with that. She shares what she's learned. We talk about self-care strategies just right across the board. I'm really not sure how I'm going to title that episode because there's so much good content in there. And for sure, I don't know if you know this, but my Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast is one of my favorite forms of connecting with new people, especially in the present climate. So it is a lot of fun for me. I want to share for the last time a quote from my book room from this book called Unschooling to University by Judy Arnell. Love this book. There is so much content in this book. Even if you're not an aspiring unschooler, even if you have no intention of unschooling and you know that that's not your thing, one thing I've learned is that a lot of my learning about child development has really occurred because of a lot of reading that I've done in the unschooling world. And this gal, I mean, she's into child development as well. She's actually trained in child development, certified child development expert. And she has got a lot of interesting things to share. But today I'm going to share with you a quote from page 115, and it is about family, sibling relationships. Yeah, I put a pause there because so good, so useful in really training our kids to be kind and considerate and diplomatic and share their feelings and engage with one another in a healthy way. And also that doesn't come by naturally, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it definitely doesn't happen an easy way, whatever the easy way would be. However, she shares that siblings grow up close and remain close through adulthood, and that is an advantage of the unschooled lifestyle. At home, children mix with all ages, including siblings. They're not conditioned to think it is uncool to do so. That is so true. In the homeschool world, kids of all ages mix and connect and have the benefit of socializing within the family. Family is still the best social structure for raising kids, although in some families it is getting squeezed out in favor of academic progress. We must protect and nurture our family relationships over the long term. Pat Ferenga, author of Teach Your Own, said, "Don't sacrifice family closeness on the altar of education. Unschooling promotes lifelong sibling relationships." And even as I am recording this, I know that there is a group chat amongst my immediate family members congratulating my second daughter on her admission into ballet school across the country. So she is very excited, and they're all sharing together and sharing the excitement of this accomplishment. Unschooling promotes lifelong sibling relationships. This book, Judy Arnell's book, she actually quotes an author, the Teach Your Own author, Pat Ferenga. And this book, in the book, is also on my Homeschool Mama reading list. So both Judy Arnell and Pat Ferenga's books are on my Homeschool Mama reading list. If you want to get a jump start on learning a little bit more about your children, about their development, about how they learn, and maybe get curious about what unschooling even really means, then I encourage you to get on my website, Capturing the Charmed Life, and download a PDF of what I would recommend as Homeschool Mama reading list, because those are the books that I really gleaned from over the years and benefited from. Today, I am going to share with you 13 things mentally strong mamas, homeschool mamas, don't do. Homeschool mamas definitely need to be mentally strong, don't you think? This compelling title I think I found it in an airport on my way to somewhere. You know, when you have a few extra moments to do nothing, and so then you wander around in the shops, which we're not really doing all that often anymore, right? But I found it, and immediately it caught my attention because it says on the back page, or the byline of the title says, "Take back your power, embrace change, face your fears, and train your brain for happiness and success." Yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm curious. I got some spare time. I would be happy to learn more about that. And the reason I think it's important to share with you, because as a homeschool mama, how we think affects our homeschool. How we think affects how we approach our life, affects how we approach our sense of purpose, definitely all of our relationships. So obviously also our homeschools. And I would say that this comes in remarkably useful timing to the present climate. Lots going on, so much going on this year, so much going on. But anyway, y'all know that. The 13 things that she shares are not specific to the homeschool mom, but you're going to see how some of them very clearly relate to the homeschool mom. So I'm going to give you in a quick rundown the 13 things. There's certain ones I'm going to focus on more than others, partly for time's sake and partly because I also want to hear what your thoughts are on how you think these 13 things actually translate into a homeschool family's world. The very first thing she says is so 13 things mentally strong people don't do. 1, they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. If you think bad things always happen to me, then create a list of good things that have happened. Then replace your original thought with something more realistic, like some bad things happen to me, but plenty of good things happen to me as well. How does this relate to a homeschool mom's world? Well, we can take it in all sorts of different directions. So I'm going to give you my first thoughts. We go into homeschooling because we want to enjoy this life with our kids. We want to learn with them. We want to develop a passion for learning within them. We want to encourage them on their own journeys to become the most full them. Except that every day doesn't feel like that. In fact, some days there are those days that are definitely not a day that we want to include in our regular day-to-day, and that don't remotely feel like a good thing happened to us. So sometimes it can get really easy to focus on the bad things, to focus on the things that aren't working right, the things that we know deep down inside of us, this is not going well. I know I need to handle this differently, but I don't know how. So I'll keep doing the thing that I'm already doing because I haven't got clever enough to, or spent enough time to think, what should I do differently? So then after a while, it can feel like those bad days or those days are becoming too frequent. They get to be kind of overwhelming. This is why it's useful to journal gratitudes or have a gratitude practice, to write down the things that went well. Make sure you have someone to talk to, to share those things, so that that other person can say, there aren't only bad days. You actually have a lot of good and many good days. We went into this homeschool thing for a specific reason. Me, it was freedom. And I can say a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom in this lifestyle, and I am very grateful for it. And when I record the things that we do or record the good things that happen on a daily basis, I discover, oh yeah, there are many good things, and I can keep track of what the good things are instead of getting focused on those days. Number 2, 13 things mentally strong people don't do. Mentally strong people don't give away their power. Anytime you don't set healthy emotional and physical boundaries for yourself, you risk giving away your power to other people. Even with our children. Perhaps it's a spin on how we can see the word power, because power can have like a really strong hold, a strong man kind of approach, or we could think of it as energy, your potential for harnessing your energy or the person that you really are. You limit it when you're not creating boundaries around you. What kind of boundaries? We all have different boundaries, or we all want to have different boundaries. I'm someone that doesn't always want big noise all the time. Sometimes I need spots that are just quiet, and so I can think, or I can do something. I could read and be in my own mental space. Sometimes I want to physically be separate and be alone, which really qualitatively changes how I experience the activities that I'm doing in quiet. I know you all know that. But sometimes I want that alone time. Sometimes I want my children to always be kind to each other and never be unkind. But I do. And I think I discuss boundaries in this context because I'm teaching them to build boundaries for themselves with their relationships, with the people around them. But I'm also teaching them to be kind and consider how they engage actually affects those around them. So I'm helping them to build that kindness muscle and keep practicing on the kindness muscle so that their sense of boundaries are, I must respect other people and I expect to be respected as well. That's the first three things I think of with boundaries as a homeschool mom with your kids. Boundaries, kind of important, or you'll get overwhelmed. Mentally strong people don't do this. They don't shy away from change. Not like we have a choice anyways. There's always something that comes up that shifts how many extracurriculars we can afford to do, or maybe we can't even go out to them in this year, or maybe our kids are developing, they grow up and they're developing, so they're not always going to remain the same. We have to accept that they're going to be changing, or maybe we can accept even within that change, that compelling to accept change, that not only do they grow up and pull, but they also kind of pull away from us. They can still maintain a close connection, but they want to be their own separate selves. We need to accept that. We need to accept that all of our children are very different, that they learn differently, that they might need a radically different curriculum. Mentally strong people don't, number 4, they don't focus on things they can't control. Sigh. If this year has taught me anything or reminded me of anything, it is you are not in control. Except that it's reminding me of that because I already knew that. I've had enough life experience to teach me that I'm not in control. I don't like it. I don't like it, and I'm not going to like it. And yet it is what it is because it's not all in my control. It never was. So then I allow myself to accept it. But simply reminding yourself that you have a choice in everything you do, everything you think, and everything you feel can be very freeing, says Amy Morin. I recently watched a video on YouTube by Dr. Edith Eger, who was a Holocaust survivor. She was a 16-year-old ballerina and was brought to Auschwitz with her family. Towards the end of the year that she spent there, they were very much in need of food, and there were some that were reverting to eating bodies. She said to herself that she has a choice. She has a choice to eat grass or to do what some other people were doing. So she would specifically choose the blade of grass. She'd spend time even curating the grass in her close area, deciding which piece of grass she was going to consume. If that doesn't remind you that you always have a choice, there's always a choice before you in everything you think, in everything you do, and everything you feel. That is freeing. Mentally strong people don't worry about pleasing everyone. Well, does that not apply to a homeschool mom? Keep in mind that one person's opinion of you doesn't make it true. You can respectfully choose to disagree and move one without devoting time and energy into trying to change the other person's mind. That one is a hard one for me, because I'm the kind of person that wants to put everyone at ease and feel comfortable around me. And I want them to feel that they're liked. And you want to guess why? Because I want that for myself as well. So when someone misunderstands me, that's really difficult. And yet we don't get to determine how people perceive us or how people receive us or how people engage us. And as someone has said somewhere along the way, and it's none of our business anyway what they think. Having said that, as a homeschool parent, we are constantly questioned about our choice to homeschool. Even in the subtleties, we can be in a public place and someone asks, oh, is school out? Or, why are you grocery shopping at 1 p.m? Or they say, oh yeah, that is so good. I've heard homeschooling is so great, but also but how do they make friends? Or you're with a parent-in-law, you're with a family member, you're with a neighbor, and they're concerned about your child's education. Their cursive isn't how you would expect a child's cursive to be at a certain age, or they don't know how to multiply fractions the same age as somebody else's child. Yep, there's always that comparison game that we have to address. There's always the concerns that we have to address. And also, we get to determine how we think about our family. We get to determine what we do with our family. So we don't have to worry about pleasing everyone. The sixth thing that Amy Morin says mentally strong people don't do is that they don't fear taking calculated risks. Don't we take calculated risks by homeschooling? In that it's not the mainstream kind of thing to do. I think we inherently do it, and we'll continue to do it with confidence when we don't second guess ourselves. The seventh thing is don't dwell on the past. All those things that you haven't done right with your kids. Our goal is not to focus on them. I know that we're going to have regrets, or if we were to do it again, because we know what we know now, we would do it differently. But I love Maya Angelou's quote that I will misquote right now. She said something like, we do what we do until we know better. And that's always true. Nobody's purposely trying to do something that they don't want to do, or they don't want to do the best thing. So what's the value in looking back and saying, you didn't do it well, you failed, you made a mistake, you did a big mistake. What's the value in it? Amy Morin says, refusing to dwell on the past doesn't mean you pretend that the past didn't happen. In fact, it often means embracing and accepting your experiences so you can live in the present, accepting what is. The eighth thing that Amy Morin says that mentally healthy people don't do is they don't make the same mistakes over and over. Tricky one. Instinctively, when I first hear that, I think, yeah, but we do. Like we do, and we do, and we do. Because like what I just finished saying about not dwelling on the past, if I hadn't made that mistake and I hadn't continued to make that mistake, then I wouldn't have something to regret. We make those mistakes over and over until we know better, and then we don't. But our underlying goal is to not make those mistakes and to be learning and growing alongside our kids. The ninth thing that Amy Morin says that mentally healthy people don't do is they don't resent other people's success. In fact, if someone's celebrating around you, Just celebrate with them, whatever they're doing, congratulate them, wish them well, whatever it is that they're doing. Be grateful that they're there and they're doing their thing and they are finding success in that they're doing their thing. That isn't a reminder to you when someone is successful, or the classic thing to say about homeschoolers is, my child got into Harvard. Well, I know my kids can't go to Harvard because I can't afford Harvard, but especially as a Canadian, heading to Harvard isn't the only thing. But when someone does, and they have worked hard to get there, or they have always aspired to doing that thing, we celebrate with them and we say, great, I'm so glad that you got to do this thing, and not compare ourselves. The 10th thing Amy Morin says that mentally strong people don't do is they don't give up after their first failure. I love this one because as a 15-year homeschool mom, I want to say to all the newer homeschool families, nothing I learned, almost nothing I learned, did I not learn without a lot of effort. And I don't know anybody's story out there that has homeschooled for a long time that would say that it was just like riding a bike. No big deal. It was super easy. We might all have different things that we have to grapple with. We might all have really different things to be challenged by, but we're all learning and we all have lots to learn. And we make a lot of mistakes along the way. The only thing that we did that could maybe, you could say, set us apart in this is that we kept going. So if you're grappling with something like not sure how to deal with a child that has a learning challenge, or with having a child that is really running counter or contrary to you, or you're having too many of those days. But if you really want to still keep doing this, keep going. Find a way to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you are building boundaries in all the healthy ways, and you're building yourself up. And then you're going to be more able to see what your children need, but you're also going to be able to give what you need. And you're going to be able to look past those moments that feel like you're failing. This isn't working. You can't do this. Because you can do this. Remember, the only difference between somebody that decided to let it go and stop homeschooling and somebody that's done it for 15 years, no magic sauce. We just kept going. So you can keep going and you can do this if you want to do this. The 11th thing that Amy Morin says that mentally healthy people don't do. They don't fear alone time. There's this idea out there that kids need to be surrounded by other kids in order to feel satisfied in life. I don't know about you, but I mean, some of us are very extroverted and some of us are introverted and some of us are kind of in the middle, and I'm probably a little bit more on the middle, but just slightly to the extroverted side. We're all different. We all have different needs, but for sure, we all need quiet time to think. We all need moments that are by ourselves just to know what's going on in here. And so do our kids. Our kids, especially when they get into those teenage years, they definitely need that quiet solitude to think about where they're going in life, what they're doing in life, and how they're engaging other people and what they expect of other people, and all that stuff, to process everything that's going on. And so do we. So don't be afraid of alone time. Amy Morin says that the 12th thing that mentally healthy people don't do, they don't feel that the world owes them anything. Also tricky for me, because at the very minimum, I expect justice. I think we're hardwired to thinking that at the very least, we expect good things to happen to good people, or when bad things happen, it'll be rectified, or people will be kind if you're kind. I had a friend one time say that I don't understand why people aren't nice to me. I'm nice to them. I'm nice to everybody. I don't understand why they don't like me. And sometimes there's people that don't like people that are nice. It's twisted, but it's true. So we can't expect that everybody is going to be anything, or that everything is going to be the way that we want it to be. Oh, we can actually expect that. It won't happen. And the frustration, the energy that we expend towards trying to make sure that they get what they are deserved it's a lot of energy, and it'll be wasting away your time. It'll be wasting away your life purpose. Just get on, keep going on, keep keeping on. The very last thing that Amy Morin says that mentally strong people don't do, they don't expect immediate results. And in the homeschool world, easy to see the application there. Also very difficult. And I know that because this has been me for the last little while, that there's certain conflicts or certain ways of engaging that I've had quite enough with. I don't want to see how they're talking to each other like that anymore. I don't like that. That's not how I speak. That's not how I want to hear you speak. And the reality is they're 11 and 15. So what would I expect that they would act like at that point? I remember a long time ago, my sister saying to me, I was telling her about a savings account that one of my kids had kept so that she could buy a big Barbie. I think it was an airplane, or maybe it was a Barbie camper. And I was so glad that she was saving this money, but I'm thinking she saved enough money to buy this camper, and that's great. But like, oh, like a Barbie camper, like that's a lot of money. That's, a couple $100 on plastic, and it's a toy, and maybe like she could save for a car when she's 18, or maybe she could save for her college education or something like that. And my sister was like, I think she was like 8 then. She's 8. What do you expect her to use this savings for? Like, she wants to buy a Barbie camper. Let her buy the Barbie camper. But my instinct was something else. I wanted to see that she immediately saw that the value would be in some long-term thing. Not a thing. She's 8. I gotta wait, and I have to let them be that age and be challenged by the things that they would be challenged by at that age, and not expect immediate results. By the way, I'm saying that, I'm being honest with you about that, except that note to self, it really is true. This is something that speaks to me incredibly. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on these 13 things that mentally strong people don't do. And does anything that I've said make you think maybe there's something else that homeschool moms are challenged by, or that certain character traits that homeschool moms really would benefit in thinking in a certain way? So leave your comments down below. As a self-care strategy for this week, I want to encourage you to take one of these points that Amy Morin mentions, or something that you're reminded by when I share these points, that you know that your perspective is not the healthiest perspective, that you've been challenged by this idea before, and you actually could do this. You could every morning journal, write that thing down, remind yourself every morning, because we quickly lose our focus and forget what we were thinking we should do. So write it down every morning, the thing that you want to focus on, so that you can begin to form and fashion your perspective in a different way. But just choose one, because I know just like I've said, I've said 13, and I probably deeply connected to about 4 right now. that I know is a challenge for me, but it's a lot to focus in 4 different directions. So choose one, write it down, and think on it or sit with it just for a couple minutes every day. Even if it's just write it out every morning in your journal to remind you that this is the way that I want to think. I would love to hear what the outcome is. So I'm going to come back to it and ask you later what it is that you benefited by, or how did your perspective shift after you spent some time thinking about that each day. Hey, if you haven't actually previewed my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, I am going to put the link of that down below so you can take a look at it. Biggest thing for me in this book is not the fun self-care strategies that everybody talks about, like the spa and Netflix and dark chocolate. I love those things, hardly have ever been to a spa, but those things are fun and I think they're important. I think the biggest thing is our thought self-care. It's our perspective. And so that's why I visited Amy Morin's 13 things. But if you haven't reviewed my book yet, I would love for you just to see what is in there. What is it that I'm offering you to shift your perspective in the things that we grapple with? I talk about grappling with overwhelm, grappling with perfectionism, with doubt, with anger, with loneliness, with a lot of other things. You know, all the human experience, all of the human emotions in a homeschool mama context. So I encourage you to jump on my Facebook page, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, and check that out. If you have questions or comments, please drop them in the comment section down below. And I'll ask you to subscribe if you want to hear more from me or if you want to reconnect on this. And until next week, I wish you and your kids a charmed life. But there'll be a few challenges along the way. So I hope you can turn your challenges into your charms. Talk to you soon.